A re-release of Dark Souls should have been a magical, momentous occasion. Well, I guess they did improve the spellcasting particle effects. I've never been shy of telling people that despite the clunkier combat, the unbalanced mechanics, the lower tier graphics and aesthetic, and dodgy online, Dark Souls is my favourite game of the Soulsborne line of games, and indeed one of my favourite games of all time. Hell, it's basically number one at this point, so when hearing of the remaster for the first time, I basically shat my pants in excitement. Now, I didn't like Dark Souls to begin with. When my friend lent me his PS3 and copy of the game, I found the whole thing a little bit ridiculous. Bullshit difficulty that left me dying in as many hits as most enemies took from me, swarms of enemies that could quickly overwhelm me, next to no indication of what direction I was supposed to go or how I was supposed to proceed. But after a little while, it all clicked. Bit by bit, I got better. I learnt to hold back and scope out enemy movesets. I figured out where to get upgrade materials to improve my weapons and armour. I realised that this otherwise bland-looking, decrepit old world had so much lore and intrigue to give through its enemies, its environments, its items and their historic descriptions. I have no regrets in sticking with it, and sticking with the franchise that spawned as a result. Fans of the series already know we received a remaster of a Souls game back when Dark Souls 2 was re-released for the newer PS4 and Xbox One consoles. Scholar of the First Sin included the 3 DLCs bundled in, and proceeded to change a whole bunch of the game, including item locations, enemy drops and enemy placements, all to keep the re-released game feeling fresh. Dark Souls 2 already had a lot going for it in terms of features. Plenty of offline invasions occur in various places of the game, a huge selection of weapons and armours that could be mixed and matched as the player desires, whether going for the min-max stats approach or the pure Fashion Souls way, the only true way. And in New Game Plus, the game would dump a load of extra little surprises like additional invaders, dark phantoms appearing during boss battles to further increase their difficulty, and even mixing up the locations of mimics, which gave quite the surprise to hapless New Game Pluses in the first few moments of their next playthrough. Now, I certainly understand the reasoning of keeping it the same. The game itself was a classic, despite its faults, and to change anything in it would detract from the very thing that blew the game up into the public gaming consciousness. Dark Souls 2 was on a much more controversial position, for much of its early life seen as the meagre leftovers of the Dark Souls ideas, but it happily grew its own following, particularly in the PvP scene for its much greater variance. But there was a chance for the game to have a Scholar of the First Sin vibe to it, mixing up the item drops and loot, changing around the enemy placements, introducing new bits of plot lines and world information, adding in additional invasions, even reintroducing the once cut plot lines for Oscar of Astora and Shiva of the East. This was the perfect opportunity to fill in the gaps the original had. Having a fellow chosen one take your alternate path and function as a true final boss, or having an additional player invasion to bolster the in-game mechanics that not all players may have access to. This was one of the few Dark Souls 3 editions the series got really right, giving the players the chance to be the summon for an NPC in various locations. As badass as it is to bring along a friendly Solaire or a beast of an Iron Tarkus into the fray, not being able to jump into the Sunman's world and obliterate a boss on his behalf as thanks for his repeated assistance throughout our game is a major shame. But no, instead we just got DS3 style healing, invaders getting Estus flasks so invasions turn into an even more annoying tedious frustration, and matchmaking that turned a simple plus or minus 10 plus 10% soul levels into a convoluted system of what the fuck is happening in a game that simply cannot support such a system. Given that Dark Souls has a few technically high level drops relatively early in the game, including the Lightning Spear in Sen's Fortress, which immediately raises your PvP weapon level to 10 as a result of it being a plus 10 infused weapon, or if you fight a Black Knight and receive one of their rare weapon drops, you'll be immediately lifted to weapon level 5, which could happen as early as before your second boss, long before you get access to weapon upgrades, and with a weapon that you likely can't even wield at that point. This is all assuming that you don't take the Master Key and skip ahead to Blighttown, Valley of the Drakes and Darkwood Forest for the higher level gear anyway, like most repeating players do. But it's especially egregious as the main benefits of this re-release are the enhanced internal renderer that can now run up to 4K 60fps, unlike the 1024x768 30fps monstrosity that the original released as. Within hours of the game's release, a fantastic mod popped up that mitigated these issues, with a few updates over the next few months that allowed for skipping the game's startup cutscenes and even introducing texture modding. And yet despite this, we never saw an official update to solve the poor technical state the game originally released in. But here we are, a good 6, nearly 7 years later, and we finally get it. as a £34.99 purchase, or £17.49 for owners of the original no longer available to buy release. This is a release that removed the original Prepare to Die edition from the store, one that fragments the online community even further with some half-baked matchmaking tweaks that have made connecting with players your perceived level even harder, one that cashes in on those who don't have the technical knowledge or willpower to implement a mod, and on the lack of gaming knowledge to know that an original version even existed. Now, I don't want to sound like a whiny entitled PC gamer here, though I totally get that that's how I'm coming across. I get that this half-price offer is only available for the owners of the PC version, while those on Pro S4 and Xbox have to buy the game full price regardless, but there's plenty of precedent for me to be pissed off at this given how other companies have handled such releases in the past. Other games, including the first two Bioshock games, Darksiders and Skyrim, have re-released versions provided freely to purchasers of the original game, and for Skyrim at least, with its 1,017 re-releases to various systems, is outright fucking amazing. The main reasoning behind this is that, unlike getting an old game updated to run on the newest consoles, you could still be using the same core PC since the original's release. Plenty of people are still using 6 or 7 year old systems to play games to this day, many of which are still more than capable of playing modern releases. But aside from that, charging an extra 20 quid so many years after the original release with little more than a patch is fucking awful. This is to a game that, to my knowledge, sold fairly well on PC given how abysmal the port job was, and hell, most of us purchased the game knowing full well how bad it was. They made it clear from the start that it'd be a bad port, but to show zero effort in fixing the problems, especially after Dark Souls 2 came out with 60 FPS and variable resolution support, I'd argue too many people are busily jerking themselves off over the slight enhancements they've been so graciously sold at a premium. I'm not going to fund a company who actively denies simple things like actually updating their game. From what I hear, players are currently harassed constantly by hackers, likely using hacks that worked on the original game to begin with, in ways that get the victims soft banned and forced to play in a hacker-filled nightmare. No skin off fuckcode bastardized backs, they've already got your money, and by the time you get to the point where hackers can start invading you frequently, you'll be well over your 2-hour window to refund. Use the original game and you can get a mod that makes finding connections with other players incredibly simple, including an overlay that shows you how far away certain people are in game from you. I'm not even suggesting that the mod is the only way to play the game. The mod is great, but there are certain issues that come with it, the engine not being particularly well designed for 60 FPS in the first place, given the relatively rare glitch I seem to get where I sit at a bonfire and I don't get a menu to appear. As far as I can tell, it's all related to the mod. But the fact that a simple, very small mod was able to achieve what it took From Software 7 years to do just indicates to me how badly you should not buy this remaster, at least if you're playing the game on PC. It's not a remaster, it's just about worthy of being called a re-release, and even then they haven't done much to it to make it that justifiable, especially for this kind of price tag. But hey, if you want to throw money away at a pathetic attempt at squeezing additional money out of a beloved, wonderful game, that's fair enough, but I'm not buying into their shitty full-price re-release of a 7-year-old game with little more to show for it than a glorified official implementation of a goddamn mod, and some minor bug fixes and balance changes we should have gotten years ago.